takes all that you've got, but he's been here, just waiting for you to knock. So take his hand and plant your feet on the rock. I want to live my life on the rock. I want to live my life on the rock. I want to live my life on the rock. I want to live my life on the rock. I want to live my life on the rock. I want to live my life on the rock.
G'day, mate. You're watching Life on the Rock.
Hi, welcome to Life on the Rock. And tonight our guest is Megan Morgan and Casey Aurelian. Megan is a chastity speaker out in the Diocese of Orange, and they are engaged to be married, so they'll be giving us reflections on chastity as a single person and as a couple about to be married. And so it'll be a powerful message tonight, maybe a message for a more mature audience tonight. So just be advised of that. And Doug, today is a great feast day in the church.
It
What
is. It is the feast of the Archangels, St. Michael, St. Gabriel, and St. Raphael. Love this feast day. A day to really think about and remember the power of these three magnificent angels, the princes of heaven, you could call them. St. Michael the Archangel, known, of course, for the famous words, "Who is like unto God?" The battle against Lucifer and the fallen angels, all those who rejected God, said they would not serve. And he led that fight and still protects and leads in that battle spiritually today.
Right. And you know, after that, we had the passage this morning in the Mass, that section from Revelation 12 about the battle. And then right after that, in 12:17, it says, "Then the dragon was angry after he was thrown out of heaven by St. Michael. Then the dragon was angry with the woman and went off to make war on the rest of her offspring, on those who keep the commandments of God and bear testimony to Jesus." So I say it's good news he was thrown out of heaven, but it's bad news he's down on earth.
And he goes to make war against those who follow Christ.
Right.
You know, so for anybody who thinks that, wow, the whole spiritual warfare thing, that's a little kind of hyped up, that's a little over dramatic, isn't it? Ladies and gentlemen, it's right there in Scripture. He's making war with us if we're trying to follow Christ. He hates. He simply hates. He's the father of all lies, the enemy. You know, but you know, the Lord gives us the great protection of the choirs of angels, and here's a day to really celebrate these three fantastic leaders, if you will. You know, Old Testament Raphael and his involvement. You know, the medicine of God, I think, is one quote.
Or God heals.
God heals, one reference to him. And he's also, which was interesting with our couple tonight, you know, Megan and Casey, St. Raphael had a lot to do with the relationship with Tobias and his wife at the time, too.
That's right.
So, you know, he's that kind of
and that's the powerful
matchmaker of heaven, if you will. You know?
Right, a powerful intercessor for today when so many marriages are struggling, whatever. Ask the prayers of Saint Raphael.
Yeah.
What about Gabriel?
I've heard of him. What did he do?
Well, his name means power of God. Power of God. He's in the Old Testament and the New Testament, of course, at the Annunciation to Our Lady. And what I like to think about that, you know, he's announcing the good news. God is becoming incarnate. The Holy Spirit's going to overshadow Mary, and this begins in a true sense our redemption, you know, starting to really move now. And we see God's power. God's at work. You know, he's a powerful God that just doesn't sit back and watch what we're going through. Enters into human history, and we know how it's ending, right? Everything is heading towards this consummation at the end of time. And that's the power of God.
Yeah,
that,
it really is
effective.
And I love the image of Gabriel coming to Our Lady and telling her this is God's plan, but still waiting for our Blessed Mother's yes. And that's the great thing, is that Mary wasn't forced into this situation. You know, ladies and gentlemen, she chose, you know, by saying, "Let it be done to me according to thy word." She gave her fiat, her yes, her totally yours. And I kind of imagine Gabriel, you know, speaking these words so powerfully to Our Lady about this great message, or this great journey that she will be taken on if she says yes. And you can imagine all the angels in heaven just kind of waiting for a second, as if there would be this heavenly pause, this heavenly holding of the breath by all the angels to what is Our Lady going to say. And of course, when she says yes, you know, then all the celebration begins in one sense from all the angels, because they know, like you said, things are moving now.
Right.
Yeah.
Now you told me you were impressed by a talk Mother gave. You heard or a
Just
show.
this week, in fact, yeah, a couple days ago, they were replaying one of her old shows, and she was talking about the real importance, that we make friends with the angels, that we don't just call on them now and then, don't just remember the little guardian angel prayer, but that this is a great time for us to remember when we celebrate the Feast of the Archangels. It's a great time to remember, ladies and gentlemen, that we make friends with all the angels, that we don't just focus on these three, that we don't just remember, our nighttime prayers when it comes to Angel of God, my guardian dear, but that we really understand their role, their position, the seraphim, the cherubim being so close to the throne of God. And when you pray the prayer, the chaplet of St. Michael, and go through the 9 choirs and read about each of those 9 choirs, it's some pretty powerful stuff in there.
Right.
But Mother Angelica was just making mention in a recent show that was re-aired just this week, that we need to really make friends with the angels. We need to bring them into our lives on a daily basis, because they are there to help us, guide us, protect us, strengthen us, to help us fight that good fight, help us grow in virtue, and get to heaven in the end.
And they're throughout Scripture. As I didn't really realize that until I started preaching on them. You start looking up occurrences in Scripture where they're present, and it's throughout the New Testament, it's in the Old Testament. So it's clearly part of God's plan, part of His providence, how He's governing this world to Him, to Himself, how everything is going to find its fullness in God. The angels are there to help bring the message of God, help to bring God Himself to man, as Pope Benedict said. They participate in that work. I'd like to just say something before we go to break. I read a recent reflection by Pope Benedict about the recent Madrid World Youth Day, and he would say in general about World Youth Day, he said, I would say that these World Youth Days are a sign, a cascade of light that give visibility to the faith and God's presence in the world, and thus create the courage to be believers. Believers often feel isolated in this world, almost lost. Here they see they are not alone, that there is a great network of faith, a great community of believers in the world, that it is beautiful to live in this universal friendship. And thus, it seems to me, friendships are born, friendships beyond the confines of different cultures and different countries. And this birth of a universal network of friendship that links the world and God is an important reality for the future of humanity, for the life of humanity today. Doug, in the commentary, I know I was trying to find words when we were out over there in Spain. And he said more in that paragraph than I think I said the whole week, But he has a way of just nailing things,
He does.
And
He really does.
And it is. The World Youth Day is big, and there 2 million people gather, give a sign of solidarity, give a sign of faith, and he captured. Oftentimes believers feel isolated in this world, almost lost. Right. The kingdom. At times, God, Jesus compares it to a mustard seed, right? At times it seems almost hidden. Right?
Well, and it's good to bring this up, Father. Periodically we've got to be reminded of this of the event. It's not just something that happens every couple of years or every year, actually, because statements like that are important to remember. That we do need one another, and he had said that over and over, that we need the church needs us, and that isolation. All those kids and all those young people, and any of us who were over there excited about that event, go back home, and it's very easy to fall into the day-to-day life again and feel that loneliness and that emptiness, because not everybody's going to share the excitement. You're going to get back home, and I'm sure a lot of people got back home and we're all pumped up and excited about it, and not everybody around them was as excited.
Right.
Some were just excited that you got to take a trip to Spain.
Right.
But about really being by the Holy Father and being part of this family and seeing the brothers and sisters that speak other languages, verbally, but still speak the same language spiritually, is really an important thing to constantly remember. We are not alone. We are part of a much bigger picture than ourselves.
And he says, maintain those friendships, maintain that new unity maybe that was formed, even if you weren't allowed to go, just maybe what you felt or shared in your own prayer groups at home. Keep that momentum going. So we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with Megan Morgan and Casey Aurelian talking about chastity. So don't go away. We'll be back in just a minute.
Welcome back to Life on the Rock, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and people of all nations. Did you like that, Father? I've been working on that one for a long time. You're with us here, Life on the Rock.
Don't forget to say compadres.
Compadres. We're the Rock House compadres, and fellow compadres out there in EWTN cyberspace and so forth. We're at the Rock House where the time of day is always the same, 24/7, 365 days a year. And we have with us Megan and Casey. And it is Megan Morgan and Casey Aurelian.
Aurelian, exactly.
All right, pleasure to have you guys on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Great to
Thanks,
be
Doug.
have you here. So we're talking about chastity a bit tonight. We're talking about you as a chastity speaker, but I also want to really focus a bit on the fact that you guys are doing something that unfortunately in some places, in some ways, is rare. You are preparing for marriage. That's not what's rare. But you're doing it in a way that's really striving for a real godly formation and shaping of those days before marriage. Just before the show, I was talking a little bit about the athlete or the musician has to warm up properly before they perform. And the better they warm up, the better they prepare for their event, whatever that may be, the better they do. There's something about the preparation has a lot to do with the actual event itself or what's taking place. Same with preparing for Mass, to prepare for the Holy Sacrifice of the Mass prayerfully, as opposed to driving up to the church and listening to the last pitch, that last play before we got to shut the radio off and run in and maybe miss the opening hymn, but we got that, that final thought from the sports announcer. That's not preparation for Mass that's very efficacious, is it? So you're doing it for marriage in a powerful way. We want to get into that. Before we do, let's a little bit about your background, where you're from, and what kind of brings you to this this light. Shall we start ladies first, Megan?
I was born and raised in Orange County, California. I grew up in a Catholic family. We went to Mass on Sundays. We said grace before meals. I did pray, but I, to be honest, prayed when I wanted something or I needed something. So God was definitely a part of my life growing up, but he was not a priority. And this kind of became a problem because when I went into middle school and high school and I was trying to really kind of figure out who I was and what I was about, instead of having that focus on Christ, I was focused on what my friends were doing or what the boy that I liked was doing. And so once I got into high school, I went to public school from kindergarten to 8th grade. And so when I went to a Catholic high school, I went from knowing almost like everyone in my middle school to only knowing 3 people out of this freshman class of 500 people. And I remember totally being overwhelmed and having this moment in the hallway just thinking, okay, I'm going to do whatever it takes to belong, to be accepted, to be liked, and to be cool. And it was almost like whoever God created Megan Morgan to be, I didn't care about that at that moment. I kind of like pushed that person aside and just followed whatever was in front of me, whatever was cool.
Yeah, that's funny because the saints will talk about that one of the greatest temptations, or the greatest attacks of the enemy can be the desire for human respect.
Yeah.
On a number of levels. To fit in is absolutely one of those areas of desiring a certain respect of those around us, just to kind of be part of the gang and not be an ostracizer, an outcast of some sort.
Oh, for sure. And so I got what I wanted. I was accepted, but I had no peace. I was very restless. And so luckily, by the grace of God, like I said, I was in a Catholic family. So in our diocese, confirmation is your freshman and sophomore year of high school. And I had this incredible youth minister who had a great gift of really bringing out the best in somebody and seeing something in them and making them feel like they were a leader and making them feel like God could use them. And she really did that for me. And so I actually, after I got confirmed, ended up staying involved and was on the leadership team. And my senior year of high school, we had a leadership retreat. And I had this really big moment. It was right after we had Mass. So it was like dusk. We had it outside on this hill. And right after Mass ended, everybody got a candle. And we did this like candlelight procession to the chapel where Jesus was. And I remember it was a really pivotal moment because as I got in the candlelight procession, for the first time probably ever since I was in high school, I was by myself. I didn't have like my friend glued next to me that was like thinking, okay, like is she into this? Is this cool? Are we gonna sing? It was just me and God. And people were singing, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And as I was walking along that path, I literally just felt like the Megan Morgan God created came out and was just like, pay attention to me, like I'm here. And in that moment, I just looked up to heaven and I said, God, I have no idea how to do this, so please send someone to show me how. And literally that night, he sent someone. It probably wasn't the person I would have expected.
Was it Casey?
No.
Oh, okay. I was getting romantic there for a moment.
Casey came later. Casey came later.
He's a fruit of much more prayer.
It took a lot more time.
Yeah, that was later.
He was still playing golf. Sorry, go ahead.
But I think that shows that a lot of times people wonder, like, is God listening? Is he hearing me? And when your prayer is in line with his will for you, he definitely does answer. It may not always be the way that you think it's going to look like, but he will. And he didn't just send one person, he sent a whole community of people who really guided me. Because it was hard. I mean, I'm going to be honest, the retreat was over. I went back to school on Monday, and I still had all those friends that didn't go on the retreat and didn't have that moment. And so it was a real transition of, letting go of the things that I was comfortable with and trusting and saying yes to God and being patient. And I would say it happened over a span of, I don't know, not until I was in college where I felt like I really had kind of let go of all of the things that I was kind of in chains in high school, where I really, but the beautiful gift of it is the more I said yes to God, I figured out who I was. I knew who Megan Morgan was. I knew what she was about. I knew what she stood for. And I had peace. And I never had that before. And it didn't mean that I didn't have hard times or I didn't have to make difficult decisions. But I mean, he is the Prince of Peace.
Yeah.
And he gave me that peace. And I knew he was always with me.
So what was it that got you to now you're a chastity speaker?
Yes.
Okay. What was it that brought you to that point then from the freeing of the chains, the candle, and the community of hobbits or whoever it was that came and rescued you?
Yes.
You said a whole community. I imagine these little hobbits coming around, kind of lifting you up and carrying you off to the Shire to protect you. But what was it that got you to the point of then publicly speaking on this?
Well, I think the more that I continued to work on myself, my youth minister really saw that in me, and she asked me to do a girls' talk on the Confirmation 2 retreat, which I was really excited about, just because I felt like, as a girl who was very lost and kind of caught up in a lot of superficial things, and I kind of figured out different things to do to get to know who you are and to be strong in that, I gave my first talk, and it was such a powerful thing, because I remember when I got to the part where I talked about your worth, and I just looked out, and it was like you could hear a pin drop in the room, and you could just see in their eyes that they had either never been told that they were good enough or that they were worth a lot, or it had been way too long. And so it really became a passion of mine, and it started to be something that I wanted to be my mission, to really bring that to women, to let them know that they're beautiful, they are good enough, they are worth the wait, and that they should never settle.
So then one thing led to another, and someone heard you speak there and asked you to speak somewhere else, and
Yes.
And now you travel the globe. And,
Oh, yes.
But you have taken this on as kind of a part-time work, or is it full-time for you?
Yes, part-time, yes.
Okay. All right, fantastic.
Yes.
Of course, then the knight in shining armor here sitting next to you.
Yes.
Yeah. Confident. Well, that's good. That's good. And so, Casey, what's your story? Give us the backstory before you two met. We're going to get to that in the next segment,
Sure.
and we're going to get the whole 9 yards of that. We may even ask the colors of your wedding if our producer gets it her
For all those lady
way.
listeners out there.
Yeah.
And men.
Yeah. But tell us about you, Big Casey, your background.
Yeah, well, what Megan talked about, just, this idea of fitting into the world, I think applied to me similarly, but also in a very different way, how, I kind of grew up in that traditional I'm from a very small town in southwest Louisiana. And I grew up in a very conservative house where, everything was Catholic and everything was very conservative and traditional. And it was a very beautiful thing. And from the get-go, I was very involved because my brother was involved, because my parents were involved. I was always involved. And I think for me, as I evolved into someone who took on a relationship with Christ as my own, not as, my parents or my siblings, that's when the true temptation started to come alive for me. And, when I had to start my master's program in Paris. Actually was which is a great thing, and it seems wonderful, and it seems, like one path that everyone would, want to lead. They don't want to go to this place, but at the same time, spiritually, it was one of the, it brought some of the most crazy times of temptation for me, where, I'd find myself in a lobby at a hotel one night where, there was so much scandal going on that I caught myself like, what is going on here? What, this is nothing that I've ever experienced before, because when I was in college, I was glued to the computer, glued to the studies, and, everything for me had been easy. And then, as we, as I went to this trip, my eyes were opened up more and more as to kind of the evil that's out there.
Just worldly temptations,
absolutely,
the attacks that are out there.
This worldly temptation, and and it never got easier. It just got extremely harder and harder. When I came back, I finished up my studies, and then I actually moved to San Diego. And when I moved to San Diego, it was very similar. The promiscuity was all over the place, and so for me to, find my roots again was very difficult. And it wasn't this, the season of falling and trying to get back up, but just being very exposed, I think for me was very difficult, because I wanted to, I wanted to fit in, but at the same time, these things were all around me, and so for me to hold true to who I was, I had to find myself again. I had to come back and say, how can I continue to be a godly man and to minister?
How'd that happen?
Or
have you done that yet?
I have done that, actually. I have done that.
We hope so. Megan hopes so too. But I mean, so you're going through this the turmoil, the reality of, wow, this world is kind of upside down.
Right.
What was it that brought you to the point of, I'm standing firm, I'm holding my ground here?
Sure, absolutely. I think for me, I have a lot of friends that are youth ministers. They're in ministry of some sort, and for me, I've always looked at that life as, is that what God would call me to do? And I've discerned priesthood my whole life, and never really felt like that's what I was called to do. And I wondered, okay, God, you have me in school to be an architect, and I feel like this is where I want to be. But at the same time, I feel like, okay, can I be a godly man and have a regular, just a regular job like this? So I felt like constantly my fight was, how can I be in the world and not of the world? And so, that took on a life of its own for me, in not just ministry outside of my work, but also ministry in work, and just sharing who I am with people and letting people see that, being very transparent. And that has evolved for me into the ministries that I do now, and finally.
So you had good community that you could draw on. You had good roots that were there. See, that makes a great point. Is that you both had the roots. You both had something that a foundation that was laid down. The first building analogy for an architect on the show. There was a foundation that was laid down. The footings were in place. Footings. Going underneath the fountain. All right. We'll get more to that a little bit as we go on here. So, okay, awesome. Well, we're going to get more into how you two met then, the next chapter of your life and your journey, and possibly again, maybe even the colors of the wedding. We'll see if we get that far. We'll be back after we take a break, ladies and gentlemen. Don't go away. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's my contemplative look, yes. Welcome back to Life on the Rock. You're in the Rock House with the Rock House compadres, Father Mark, myself, Doug Barry, and we have with us Megan Morgan and Casey Aurelian. You are both from San Diego, California. You're originally from Orange County, and you're originally from Louisiana.
That's right. That's
I
right.
say that right? Louisiana?
Louisiana.
We got some Louisiana people in the crowd here, so I got to say it right, so I don't throw anything at me. So, okay, so we hear about your past. You're both raised Catholic, but you kind of both went through a little. You reached that kind of lukewarm point at one stage or another in your life.
Yes.
Some call it the cafeteria Catholic. I call it the clock in, clock out Catholic. Where you going to Mass, you put your hand in the holy water font, and you clock in. And then when you leave church, you put your hand on and you clock out.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the extent of the faith for some people.
Absolutely.
But you both found your roots and your foundation, and you got back in the faith, you got active. Now everybody wants to know, even Oprah is watching right now, and she wants to know.
Even Oprah.
How did you two meet? What happened next? Let's hear from your side first, Megan. Go ahead, tell us.
Well, so like I said, it was senior year of high school where I had my kind of moment with God, and then my senior year of college is where I felt like I had really let go of all those things. And so I got to this place where I felt like, okay, I feel like I'm in a good place. I'm ready for God to bring that good Catholic man in my life. I'm going to start praying for this, and hopefully he'll be here soon.
Checking the calendar. Lord, can we do this, before next spring?
Yeah. And so I figured, maybe I'll have to wait a year, 2 years the most. And so then I waited a year, and then I waited 2 years, and then 3, 4, and 5.
And so for 5 years,
5
you're
years.
praying for the knight in shining armor to come swooping in
am.
and rescue you.
And this is what she ended up with. So I don't know. I still ask her, are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you want to get married? This is your chance to get out of this.
But I will say, especially to single girls out there who are desiring a husband, my heart goes out to them because it is hard, and you do have to be patient. And there were definitely moments where I was frustrated with God, when I was angry, or when I was sad. But when I look back now, because when Casey came into my life, it was, of course, totally not expected. But I see that he was calling me to go even deeper. And he provided so many opportunities during those 5 years that I don't know if I would have done if I would have been in a relationship. So I would encourage all girls, don't just sulk at home and think I'm destined to be an old maid. I think that you should get out, do what you love, do what you're passionate about. And God will send them.
Well, and I think, and you've got a really good point there, is that, use this time to form and develop who you are as a young woman while you're waiting to see if God's going to bring, as a young man should do as well.
Absolutely.
To form yourself in your faith and your who you are as a person, so that you can be an even better gift to that person.
Right.
That
I
God
feel
may
like,
bring to you.
sorry to interrupt you, Doug, but I feel like if we're not at a place, if we're not at the right place by the time we do meet that person, after 5 years of waiting or after 2 months of waiting, whatever it is for anyone out there, I think we have the tendency to suffocate one another if we're not prepared to meet that person individually. And I think that was very important for us, that we found our passions. Megan found things that she just absolutely loved, and I found things that I absolutely love to do. And whether it's being involved in ministry or, our careers, whatever is that we do, we're fulfilled.
Now, before we get to the details of how you met and how you proposed to her, which we have to ask, and we have to get the whole story on that. She's praying for 5 years, fasting, acts of penance, mortification.
In the desert.
Novena.
In the desert.
Yeah.
Yes. And what were you doing? Golf, basketball,
Absolutely.
frat
Played a little.
parties. I mean, no, seriously. So, what were you doing to prepare, or what was going through your mind and heart during those 5 years, or any of that time before you met Megan?
Sure. Well, I was learning a lot about myself. I did have girlfriends before Megan. When I moved to San Diego about 5 years ago, when I finished with school, and I did have girlfriends. And one thing I noticed about myself was that, I started to really, I started to analyze relationships and analyze things, different situations that I was in, because I was unhappy in them, but I thought it was something that I should do, and I wanted to do it, but it wasn't what I was called to do, and I needed to get out of it. So instead of just getting out of it, I started to, analyze it and try to figure out, what is it about the other person that is so wrong, and so I think, through a lot of my past relationships, it went from being analytical, looking at these things, from kind of a negative way, trying not to be, the person who had anything wrong with him, to taking an honest look and saying, hey, what kind of man are you? Are you preparing yourself for that person that is really going to be your wife one day. And I think for me, you know, it was a continual growth. You know, there was often times that, you know, I was just completely complacent, and you know, I had very specific friends who, you know, saw that in me. They saw that I was being complacent. I was, you know, just very comfortable, you know, and they said, no, you're coming with me on this mission trip, or you're, you know, we're going to talk about this. You know, how is your prayer? You know, are you praying right now?
You had guys challenging you.
I had guys challenging me all the time, you know.
God bless them.
Whether,
because so many men are so silent these days when it comes to the spiritual life with their buddies. You know, I'm thinking, come on, if we're soldiers in the battlefield and we're not helping to train one another to take on, you know, combat situations, then we're going to help each other get shot up and killed in the battlefield.
Absolutely, and you know you have a good friend when you haven't talked to him in maybe, you know, 5 years, and you know you never see him because he's in another state. He calls you up, and within the first 15 minutes, hey, are you praying? Let's be real here.
Yeah.
How are you doing? You know, and I feel like I had those guys, and that was a big part of it. And I think another big part of it was just, you know, taking that to the next level and say, okay, I'm not just going to go to work every day. What can I do? What can I get out there and do? And just not being complacent. And so, I had to continue to challenge myself. And you know, I'm also a musician. I play drums in several worship bands, and I think for me, that was my passion. That was my drive. That was one thing that God said, here's a gift. Like, do something with it. And I think it's so easy for me to say, well, I'm really tired at work. You know, I'm really stressed out. I'm really busy. I'm not gonna do anything else. But I think just that drive to get out there and do something and find a passion, you know, something that I was passionate about that I could be fulfilled in, obviously other than my relationship with God, but just something that I was really pumped up about, you know, whether it's like football or whatever it is for those guys, you know.
So then I'm curious now, was it the drummer part of him that captivated you, or how did you two meet? How did it happen?
We actually first met at a Theology of the Body talk down in San Diego. I went down to hear it.
That's a plus. That's a plus right there.
It was a plus. When he was there, I was like impressed by that for sure. But we just met briefly there, and then I would say for a year we kept running into each other at different like Catholic conferences, our events, our concerts, and we started to get to know each other more, and we started to be friends. Then we thought, okay, maybe this is going to turn into something more. So it was kind of at a perfect time because he was actually going on a mission trip and I was going on a week-long retreat in Pennsylvania. So we both like weren't talking to each other, and we really took it to prayer and asked God to reveal to us if this is what he wanted for us. And when we got back from both of our different things, we connected and felt like it was both the desire in our hearts to.
Okay, hold on. So with the audience right now watching and listening right now, it was just this kind of mutual, okay, we should get married, yeah, okay, let's get married. Or was there a moment, Casey, where you came to her and you dropped to the one knee and you sprung the question, you know, Megan, I want to be your knight. I want to save you. I want to give you the moon. I mean, so did he do this? Did he the big proposal, was it there?
Yes, he did a very good job.
Okay, and tell us about it.
Well, he had to lie to me for a week because his brother is actually
because all great relationships start in lies.
Built on the foundation foundation of truth and lies. Wait, so go ahead.
Well, his brother is a commercial photographer, Jamie Oberlin, and so he was actually hiding in the bushes when he was proposing to me, taking pictures. So he was, like every night, was with his brother, but he was telling me he was doing other things.
He flew in from Louisiana, actually. She thought that he was going to be coming in like on the Saturday, and he was actually in on the Wednesday. Because if I would have told her my brother's coming in town, she would think a proposal's coming. Something's weird.
Okay. So you set it up, have him come in, and you set the whole thing up. Okay, so you're conniving, and you're being clever, and you're saying, okay, look, this is what we're going to do. All right, so then describe the scene, Casey. What did you do?
So what I did, I had to keep her occupied for the day, so I called her best friend, and I said, you need to steal her, and you need to do something with her that day. So they went to the spa all day long, and it was actually pretty funny. Her best friend sent her this schedule This is very nerdy, if you ask me. Sent her this schedule where it was like the morning was the relaxation piece, the afternoon was the spiritual piece, and the evening was kind of like them building their friendship together. So it was very funny. She even emailed it to me before I did this. So they were at the spa all day. There was actually a place in downtown Orange, California that was really special to us. We'd visited several times and prayed there before, actually. It's part of the
Sisters of St. Joseph.
It's part of the Children's Hospital run by the Sisters of St. Joseph. And the convent is actually still there today, and they have these very beautiful grounds with gardens, sculptures, fountains. It's very beautiful. And for us in our relationship, Mary was a very important part of that and our devotions to her. And there was, I wanted somehow Mary to be a part of this. So there was a Mary grotto there with a big statue and the roses, the whole 9 yards. So I had my brother kind of hiding behind a big sculpture wall, and I was kind of standing in this garden. She thought I was at work. I lived down in San Diego, so it's about an hour and a half drive. She would have never expected it. This was about 5 in the afternoon, kind of sunset. So they were supposed to go to this garden to do some journaling time before she went to dinner.
Totally normal. Totally normal.
Yeah, no, that's the funniest part of this thing. I'm like, y'all really do this stuff?
Yeah.
I thought it would have been a sure giveaway, but anyway, they end up rolling up. I'm standing in the Mary garden, almost like I had kind of been waiting for her my whole life, and I had roses in front of Mary, and she walked up, and I'll let her tell the rest.
Go ahead.
Then he hugged me, and he was literally like shaking, so I knew something was going to happen. And then he was like, I need to have a conversation with you over here, and he led me over to Mary and got down on one knee and said some really nice things. I was in a moment of shock, so I don't remember everything, but it was very sweet, very thoughtful, and the ring was actually on the statue of Mary, and so he took it from her and said I wanted her to have it first before I gave it to you, and so then he put it on my finger and asked me to marry him, and it was very special.
And you said
Yes.
right away with no hesitation?
I don't think I could speak. I think at the time I was just going like that. So.
Okay. And the whole time you're hearing this.
Yeah.
Oh, you could absolutely hear it. He was probably 50 yards away, and you could like automatic weapon going off. I'm like, do you hear that right now? And she didn't. She still didn't know what was going on. And
I thought it was my friend, but then he told me it was his brother, so it was a nice surprise.
Well, great story, great story. I do know that the audience is out there, and there are some people thinking as they hear this, you guys have a wonderful faith-based story and beginning of your, future marriage and so forth, but that there are so many people who don't have that. Mm-hmm. So we're going to go to a break, and when we come back, let's talk about, what you say to the young people, and what do we do to help encourage others who don't have the foundation, the roots that you guys had to be able to go back to have prayer time and the retreat time and this sort of thing. And because there's a lot of train wreck marriages out there, unfortunately, and we want to try to address the hearts that are hurting right now. And let's pick your brain, get your insight on that. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, don't go away. We'll be back with more from Casey Aurelian, Megan Morgan, and their future marriage. We'll be following this, by the way, for the next several years to see if everything goes.
It's a reality show.
It's a reality show, exactly. We'll be back after this. Don't go away. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are in our final segment, Rock House is rocking with the love pouring forth from this young couple. Amazing. No, it's a beautiful story. It really is. You know, the prayer that's behind it, the root, the foundation of your faith and such. But there are a lot of people that don't have that, unfortunately. We want to help. We want to reach out to those people and try to engage some of those people who are struggling, or the parents right now who are watching or listening thinking, you know, my son and daughter don't have that, or they did have the foundation. How do I get them back? So I know, Father, you had some thoughts or questions on this.
Yeah, Meg, I'd like to hear more about that. You talked about that core message you give. You felt compelled. You wanted to get that message out about a woman's dignity and her worth. What do you tell the young women, and what resonates? What gets traction? What connects with their experience?
Well, the first thing I talk about is I tell them, even if I never spoke to any of them ever before in my life, I know that each and every single one of them has a desire to be known, to be pursued, and to be loved. And so often, you know, we grow up watching these like Disney fairy tale movies. We think we have to just find our Prince Charming and that will be our answer. And so a lot of times as girls, our focus is on finding, you know, the boy and the relationship, instead of being focused on God first and allowing him to then, when you're ready, bring in the right guy. And so I talk about knowing that you should be desperate for God first and to have that relationship with him, because I feel like there's no way you can truly know your worth if you don't have that relationship with God. And I think so many times what stops girls, or what makes them kind of scared to have that relationship, is the shame. Because so many times, you know, not everyone's story is that they always stayed on the right track. Sometimes they made mistakes. And so often then we feel like, well, I don't really think God would want to have a relationship with me. And so I talk about the woman at the well and how God went and told that woman, you know, here she was, having already been married 5 times, was currently living with a man that wasn't even her husband. And God told her everything she had ever done. But when he was finished, he didn't judge her, he didn't condemn her. He reached out and he restored her. And I think so many times as a woman, our past can really hold us back. And I tell them, you know, no matter what your past is, that God, he already knows it, but he's not going to judge you. He's not going to condemn you. He's going to reach out and he's going to restore you. So I kind of start out with that, with being desperate, having that relationship with him, bringing everything to him, not, you know, letting any sin or shame that you have hold you back. And then I go into kind of like the creation story, and how when you know, we grew up, you hear that story over and over again, and there's a key thing in that story that I think sometimes people miss, and it's how when God creates the world, you know, he's using his voice. And he, you know, says, let there be light, and there is light. But when he created Adam, he literally, you know, picked up the dust from the earth and molded and shaped Adam. And when he created Eve, you know, from the rib of Adam, like, created Eve. And that he really did make us in the image and likeness of him. And that as a woman, we have all these pressures that, you know, this is what beautiful is, and it's in this box. And if you don't fit into this box, then you're not beautiful, which is the worst lie. God created each of us different for a reason, and each and every single one of us is beautiful. And each and every single one of us fulfills a place in this world that no one else can. And I think so many times because we feel like we're either too much or not enough, we kind of hide, and we only put forth what we think people desire. And just really affirming them that, you know, God created you and he said it was good. He said it was very good. And just to really give them that message, because I mean, if you watch television, the commercials, I mean, it's always, you know, you need to buy this, you need to have this cream, your hair needs to be this color, and it's never embracing, you know, your true beauty and embracing what God has given you.
Yeah, and that whole hair thing is completely overrated, if you ask me. Big emphasis on hair. So. But.
Well, and I emphasize that because I feel like when you know that you are worth something, you're not going to settle. I think with so many girls who, like I said, maybe don't have that relationship with God, or just looking in desperation for that guy, and are only putting forth what they think is desired by men, they're willing to settle, because the first guy that's going to come and give them attention, they're going to latch onto that.
So foundation has to be, there has to be a spiritual root, there has to be a spiritual foundation there has to be a connection of the understanding of what our relationship is with God first and foremost.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then embracing who God created you to be, and not holding back from that. Because when I felt so empowered when I finally embraced that. And I think when you do embrace that, then you can be a witness to other people. And I also touch on that, just how, you know, I went to college, I was in a sorority. It was a very, you know, secular sorority. And I was known as the church girl. You know, people knew that I went to, you know, the school activities and the meetings, but I didn't partake in any of the other outside parties or anything like that. You know, I was waiting for marriage to have sex. And it was so interesting because when you're a senior, they have this senior send-off and everyone reads letters about you in front of everybody. And I remember sitting there kind of nervous because all these girls were getting read their letters and it was like, oh, remember that one party and this and that. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, what are they going to say about me? I didn't do any of that stuff. And it was such a moment for me where I thought, never doubt that the world is hungry for true, genuine love, and that when you give that to people, they will fully embrace it. Because when people read their letters to me, it was about, you know, like your integrity, your respect, all the things that you do at your church. And the moment that really struck me was I had a girl write, you know, my whole life, because when I first met her, she wasn't in a very good spot, not making good decisions. And I think so many times people get kind of scared because they feel like to preach to somebody else, you know, you need to take out the Bible and have an I Love Jesus t-shirt and a huge crucifix and be like, you know, this is what it means to be a disciple. But I totally, and you can, and there's no, if people feel called to that, then more power to them. But I think, you know, St. Francis, so powerful, preach, and when necessary, use words. I think through your example of who you are and how you live your life, like that reaches so many people. And she just said, you know, when I first met you, I really felt like there was something different about you. And through our time together, I've realized how important your faith is. And to me, you know, I grew up my whole life learning about this man named Jesus. And when I met you, I feel like I got to know him. And it was in that moment where I felt like, that's just it though. Like you can literally be Jesus for somebody else. And that may be the only Jesus they meet. And just how it's so important to not be scared to live this out and to be passionate about it and to live it out in a big way and not to be ashamed.
Make it part of your life,
Yeah.
So what would you say then, what would you two say, you know, we've got about 5 minutes left in the show. You got a lot of couples out there, and that's the foundation you just talked about, and that can apply to men too very well. You know, men don't worry about so much the beauty aspect, although some guys do. More than they really should, but the guys do still worry about the big gorilla in the jungle sort of thing. You know, I'm tougher, I'm stronger.
Sure.
You know, I'm that dude you don't want to mess with. You know,
Or achievement.
or achievement's a big one. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not a man until I achieve something or something.
a status of some sort.
Right.
Yeah. So what do you say to them? Is, you know, in preparation for a relationship?
Absolutely. I think, you know, I would say to, you know, a lot of people that are especially, you know, not at the best place, because not everybody that's going to be watching this is going to be where they want to be. They're on a road, they're traveling somewhere, they're, you know, they're struggling. And I think that when people, you know, they hide, just like in the garden when Adam and Eve hid, you know, I think that is what holds us back so much, is that we hide from our sin and we shut ourselves off from other people. And I think that for us, you know, the biggest witness that we've had in our relationship is other people, and it is community that are constantly lifting us up. And so I think that people need to, you know, start to think of the way they live out their relationships, the way that guys treat women, as that's a ministry. That is something that people are going to witness. They're going to experience. They're going to experience Christ through that. Pursue your woman, you know. And I think that, you know, once we, you know, start to create these communities, that's how revolution happens. Revolution doesn't happen by us being burdened by our sin and letting that bring us down. Revolution happens by, hey, I'm hurting right now. I'm struggling. I just need to tell somebody about it, and we need to do this together. You know, and it's not just something we do when we get to a relationship and we're going to expect that the other person's just going to fix that.
Now, when you say pursue her, can you define that a bit? Only because there are those out there who see women as a trophy to pursue. They
Sure.
see them as an inappropriate prize, as a notch in the belt. You're talking about something that's much more godly. I always referred to it as pursue her as that godly treasure that you're trying to win the heart of. But define a little more what you mean by, you know, men should be pursuing women appropriately.
Absolutely.
In a godly way.
Absolutely. I don't think that, you know, our intention, you know, I think our goal in the end is to get our spouse to heaven, and it's, you know, to help get our best friends and our, you know, our family to heaven, you know, and we all have a role in that. And I think that, you know, if we go into relationships looking at it as, how can I help this person to become a better version of themselves than they were before, then if we had that view rather than, hey, you know, I'm just going to look for, you know, the best looking girl and, like, you know, hope that, you know, I can get her number and hope that, you know, she'll let me take her out on a date or something like that, or, you know, whatever it is that, you know, guys are, you know, trying to get women for, you know, that
kind of the selfish, self-gratifying approach as opposed to the sacrificial. You know, my job is to get this bride to heaven.
Absolutely.
To preserve her soul. And
to know, you know, that guys, you know, the intention is that we go out and we, you know, we pursue women. We, you know, if it's something that we want and we feel called to, you know, and we pray about that, you know, is this something that I should be doing? Is this something that God really wants me to do, or is it just something that I want? And I think part of our pursuit is to discern that, you know, and make sure that that's something that we should be doing. And I think that's why it was really important the time that we took before. You know, I think part of, you know, my pursuit was when I told Megan, like, hey, Megan, you know, I want this, but I'm not sure if this is supposed to happen. So,
well, I mean,
let's talk about this.
Great
let's pray
point.
About this.
Foundation in God, communication with each other, set the right boundaries, keep everything pure and holy, and make sure that it's about seeking the salvation of the other and not self-gratification of the one. Yeah. Guys, God bless you. Wish you all the best and God's grace in your future marriage. Thanks for being with us tonight. All right, Father, let you take us out.
The Lord be with you.
And also with
with you.
And our Heavenly Father shine His face upon you and give you His peace. And may Almighty God bless you, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. We'll see you next week.
All right.